Praise the higher. Black men helping black men. Today we're going to speak about the interracial relationships. This might come across controversial, but it's something that needs to be spoken about, and too long we've been hiding away from the effects of this. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, you'll find that interracial relationships are not allowed. So, easiest way to explain, if you're an Edomite or the so-called white man, you marry a white woman. If you're black or the so-called or Israelite, the so-called Negroes, you stay with your women. If you're Indian, you stay with Indians. If you're Chinese, you stay with Chinese. Now, this is one of the laws that I never, in the past, I would have thought was racist or wouldn't have even tried to understand it. But truth be told, I've seen examples of things I didn't understand, and I thought I'll run ignoring the scripture, and it slapped me in the face every time. Even these scriptures, I've experienced this negatively. I've experienced things that you think nothing of, like the New Testament says no jesting. Jesting is acting a fool because you think it's funny, and not just joking around, but you're actually acting a fool because you think it's funny, and then the reality is everyone thinks you're a fool. So when you've got something real to say, everyone still thinks you're a fool, and that still negatively affects me till this day. And the reality was, all I needed to do was let some situations be awkward rather than acting a fool to hide the awkwardness of the situations. Now, with this topic, it's crucial because I agree with this from experiencing it and reading it. If it's in the Bible, I try to understand it because it's in there for a reason. Looking at society, looking at the information in the books that also go into this. There's not many books you'll find with the political correctness searches these days, or even just seeing the results of what happens when you do so. And this is the reality of interracial relationships, is you have to admit that when that child grows up, one of your cultures are going to be deleted or magnified above the other. And with a mother being a nurturing influence, usually it's the father's influence is the one that is going to be deleted. Otherwise, it's whatever direction society pushes you into. So, as an example, a mixed race woman with a black father, in general, unless she grows up in areas which are predominantly black or Israelite, generally the mother's influence will be taken into account over the father's influence. Especially for us as a people who have lost our identity, you're leaving yourself wide open for that child to grow up with no real remembrance of your identity. The majority identity that child generally picks up would be the mother's identity. Examples, you may even see this with Chinese and Edomite or so-called white interracial relationships. That child will generally grow up associating themselves more with the westernized white culture than they would the Chinese culture, from the examples you may see. Whereas if that child grew up in a predominantly Chinese area, that child would most likely act Chinese. But then again, that's environmental influence as well to be taken into account of what I'm saying. Now, the dangers of this is in our ratio of this channel being black men helping black men, and we're trying to find who we are again and follow the Most High according to how He wants us to follow Him. I'm going to keep this advice only in relation to us, and I'll be honest with you, it's a stupid idea if you want to go interracial. Majority of us have been heavily oppressed to the point our original identity is dwindling, and if you're going to go interracial, you're only going to dwindle that even faster and even further. by 2 generations, if they continue in the interracial route, it will be as if your influence never existed. So it's a stupid idea. Would never do it. Be honest with you. Especially if the child has a white mother, because their traits are very different to the natural nurturing influence of an Israelite woman. Now, what I mean is, it doesn't destroy them or it doesn't affect them negatively, but you have a woman subconsciously raising her child with a white privilege that your child will not have access to. And it is crazy how many mixed race women try to walk through life with the same entitlement as their mother and not getting the same result, because that child, bloodline wise, it travels through the fathers scripturally. The same way a surname travels, the surname was supposed to denote where you're from or your bloodline of fathers. Society's going to treat them more towards how their father is, and even if you check the history of slaves, that is generally the case. The ones with a white father either got a lessened slavery or was able more often to be a free man, but the ones who had a Israelite father, no chance. And that theme, as much as society is turning political correct, still runs. It's just the way it goes. It's just the way it is. And it creates a confused child. It creates a child thinking society is unfair because their mother's being treated one way, their father's being treated another way, and they grow up not being treated with either. They're not being treated like the Israelite children, and they're not being treated like the white children or Edomite children. So it's not really fair on the child, because society's programmed to treat that child like how they treat the father. But the child doesn't look exactly like the father, so gets confused when they're treated like the father. But the mother's nurturing influence keeps telling that child they're different to their father, telling the child, you're somewhat like me, where society is not designed to tell that child that. Society says, we like you as much as we like you, but we don't like you the same way we like our white friends. That's just, I'll be honest. I've spent most of my life growing up in white areas. I can tell you I've seen it exactly as I'm saying it. And so it's a stupid idea. And when it comes to you trying to install your values, you've got a natural nurturing block in place, because that woman cannot understand it as natural as the women of your own nationality. It's just the way it goes. Even if the tables are flipped of a white man with a black woman, again, the black woman can't understand his values. How's she gonna teach that white man's child what it means to be with white people? It doesn't compute. Because if you want to install values, the father sets the values of the house, but the mother locks it in. Now, when you've got interracial, you set values, but it's not locking. It can somewhat lock, but it can't. The door can't close. So we have to be honest with ourselves. And the reality is, you can't be expecting the other family to treat you the same as they treat their family of the same race, because the families want continuation of themselves, and they are going to look at you and see you as a black man in another nationality's families, saying, how does this man continue our values and who we are and what we've built? You don't. You don't. You can't. You're not them. You don't. You could say it's racist, you can get upset about it. Why are they not treating me the same? Why are they not? Because you're not them. You're not them. So they're not going to treat you the same because you're not them. So you have to be real with yourself of what you're getting yourself into. Not to say that in the same nationality you can't have problems, but realistically, if you're talking continuation and setting up a legacy, if you're thinking outside of the slave programming, you need to start thinking the same race, but find a like-minded woman that stands for the same values with you as you, that can lock it in the way you need it to be locked in to understand it. Because you can't expect someone who spent their whole life growing up with one type of value, and then you come in trying to install some other values outside the slavery programming, and then you expect her to raise that child exactly as the understanding of your life experiences. It's not going to happen. It's not. Whereas at least this Israelite woman can understand that, yes, we're being impressed. Yes, I'm being attacked this way. He's being attacked that way. I've seen it with my father. I've seen it in my life. I've seen it with my brothers. I've seen it with my cousins. I've seen it. So if I need to teach my child how to navigate this, I can understand it perfectly to teach my child how to navigate how he is in this society and how society will treat him and how he needs to walk with integrity to stay on the straight path. You see what I mean? Just be real to yourselves. Start thinking long term and stop thinking about, oh, this woman's treating me nice, she's a lovely woman, and so on. It's not enough. It's not enough. Trust me, I've learned the hard way. It is not enough. You need to think the same nationality and same values and think of preservation. And if any other race stumbles upon this, you do the same. Let's be real. Praise the higher. Black men helping black men. Let each other know these things as well. Be honest with each other. And if you see your brother struggling and not being treated the same, let him know the reality of why he's not being treated the same. It's not because they're racist, it's because you can't preserve them the way they need to be preserved. It's not about race, it's about preservation of nationalities.